Hello there, good morning everybody. Welcome to today's session on reimagining learning and assessment. I'm Helen Allen and I work on digital language teaching, learning and training here at Cambridge English. And I'm delighted to introduce my colleague, Andrew. I don't know if you want to turn on your video, Andrew. Andrew's head of new product development, and he leads the development of new products to transform learning and assessment. And he's going to be inviting you to join an initiative to shape education to meet our needs as a society now and for the future. But just before we get started, like most of you, we're working from home and we're aiming to give you the best experience we can, but we're relying on home Wi-Fi. So please do bear with us if we have any issues. Before we start, there's a few suggestions to help you get the most out of today's session. We recommend headphones to get the best quality audio and hear better. Try not to have anything running on your computer like Skype. Try and switch off any programs if you can. And don't worry if the picture's a bit blurry to start with. It should hopefully improve. It's just the live streaming. During the webinar, you'll need to be able to use the chat box on the right of the screen. You can open that up. Use the chat box for comments, the Q&A box for any questions for Andrew. If it's something we can answer straight away, we'll try and type an answer to you, but we'll keep questions also for the Q&A session at the end. And we'll be asking you to use the chat box and polls for activities during this session. We will issue a certificate at the end of the session, and the certificate and a link to the recording will be sent to you afterwards too. So Andrew, welcome, and let's get started.
Thanks very much, Helen. And hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. In the next 30 minutes, what we're going to be looking at is some of the problems that we need to deal with in education and in schools specifically. We're not just talking about English language teaching here. And then we'll look at where some of those issues have come from, the rules, if you like, of the education system. And we're going to look at some examples of where those rules are changing. And then finally, I'm going to tell you about Shape Education, what it is and how you can get involved. And then there'll be some time at the end for questions, as Helen said. So this session is about reimagining education. If we were creating schools today from scratch, from the beginning, what would they look like? So obviously education has changed a lot this year because of coronavirus, which has forced a lot of things to be very different. And we're going to be thinking about how we can build on that to make some more fundamental changes. And when we're thinking creatively like this, and there are lots of options and lots of possibilities, we're thinking expansively. And then later on, when we have lots of possibilities and we want to reduce those possibilities, then we think reductively. But for now, we need to think expansively. And we're going to watch part of a video just for a minute and a half, which is describing some of the problems in the education system. It's from a modern day poet and philosopher, and he's also a rapper. So his style is a little bit unusual and he speaks quite quickly in his rap. So listen carefully, you'll be able to get the idea of what he's saying without understanding every word of it. If for some reason the video or the audio doesn't work for you, don't worry, as we'll be sending you the link for you to watch it later. And remember, think expansively as you're watching the video.
Einstein once said, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today on trial we have modern day schooling. Glad you could come. Not only does he make fish climb trees, but also makes them climb down and do a 10-mile run. Tell me, school, are you proud of the things you've done? Turning millions of people into robots, do you find that fun? Do you realize how many kids relate to that fish swimming upstream in class, never finding their gifts, thinking they are stupid, believing they are useless. Well, the time has come, no more excuses. I call school to the stand and accuse him of killing creativity, individuality, and being intellectually abusive. He's an ancient institution that has outlived his usage. So, Your Honor, this concludes my opening statement, and if I may present the evidence of my case, I will prove it.
Proceed.
Exhibit A. Here's a modern-day phone. Recognize it? Here's a phone from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Stay with me. Here's a car from today, and here's a car from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Well, get this. Here's a classroom of today, and here's a class we used 150 years ago. Now, ain't that a shame? In literally more than a century, nothing has changed. Yet you claim to prepare students for the future? But with evidence like that, I must ask, do you prepare students for the future or the past?
Okay, so what we would like to know now is from what you saw in that video and from your own experiences, do you think that there is a problem that needs solving? So there's a poll on the screen now, and could you choose one of the three options? Either you think there's a massive problem in education that needs solving, there's quite a big problem, or there's no problem at all. So please vote for the option you think now. Okay, Natasha, could you show us the results of the poll, please? Okay, thank you very much. So interesting, 49% think there's a massive problem, 49% think there's quite a big problem, and 2% think there is no problem at all. Okay, that's very interesting. We are going to look at some of the rules that schools operate by, and I've used the word rules in inverted commas here because they're not official rules that if you don't do this you're breaking the law or something like that. They're rules in the sense that there are certain things that schools tend to do. So first of all, students are taught by age. So in most countries and most schools, students move through the school system in year groups. Secondly, subjects are taught separately. So in most secondary schools, students go to a maths class, and then they go to an English class, and then to a history class, and so on. Thirdly, you start school when you're 6 and you finish when you're 16. You might continue until you're 18 or 22, but the idea of your education finishing before you start a job is very common. Fourthly, exams are the most common form of assessment in most countries, and they're usually taken at the end of the year. And finally, students sit in rows in classrooms. This is still the most common form of arranging the furniture in a lot of countries, either because of large class sizes or because of small classrooms, or a combination of the two. So those are 5. There are other rules, and there are ones that may be specific in your country, but we don't have time to go into that any more right now. And some of these rules have existed for a very long time, and there were very sensible reasons for them when they were created, but society is very different now. The jobs that people do are very different, and the world of information is very different. And so what school is preparing students for is very different. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, are these rules still helpful? Do we need new ones, or do we even need any rules at all? There are lots of examples of places that have got rid of these rules, and there are lots of people doing some really interesting things in different countries and different places around the world to try new approaches in schools. And we're going to look at a few of those. So the first rule that we just looked at was students are taught by age. Well, in the Agora school in the Netherlands, Students there range from 12 years old to 18 years old, but they're not separated by year groups. So the approach that this school takes is that learning is centered around projects, and they call those projects challenges. And a challenge can be done by a student on their own or in a group. And the group can have students of any age in it. And this school says that the key difference from other schools is that it's a school focused on learning, not on teaching. So we're going to do another poll now, and I would like you to tell me what you think about this idea. And you have three choices. Either you like the idea, or you don't like the idea, or you're not sure about it. So Natasha, could you start this poll, please? So please vote now. Either you like this idea from the Netherlands, or you don't like it, or you're not sure. Great. And Natasha, could you show us the results, please? Thank you. So 49% like it, 18% don't like it, and 34% not sure. Okay, so the next idea is the second rule we looked at was that students are taught separately. Well, instead of teaching, subjects are taught separately. Instead of teaching by subject, Finland has moved to what they call teaching by topic. And the capital of Finland, Helsinki, is leading the way in this. And the development manager, the school's development manager in Helsinki, he said, what we need now is a different kind of education to prepare people for working life. So subject-specific lessons where you might do an hour of history in the morning, an hour of geography in the afternoon, those are being phased out. And instead of this, there are cross-subject topics like the European Union, for example. So this means that you merge together elements of different subjects like economics, history, languages, and geography. So the same thing again. Could you tell us what you think of this idea? So Natasha, if you could open the poll. So choose the option that you think about what they're doing in Finland. Great. Natasha, could you show us the results, please? Okay, so 75% like this idea, 10% don't like it, and 14% are not sure. Thank you very much. So the third rule that we looked at was about you start school when you're 6 and you finish when you're 16. Well, in lots of countries, there's been a big increase in adult education. People are living longer, and so all of us are having to work longer. And this means that people have many different jobs throughout their lives, and they need to keep learning new skills to do those jobs. So this means that the era of lifelong learning is here, and some governments are starting to provide lifelong learning as an entitlement. So Dubai, for example, is one of the few parts of the world that has said it's your entitlement to continue learning throughout your life at no cost to you. So, do you like this idea of lifelong learning, which you don't have to pay for? So, Natasha, could you open this poll, please? And can we see the results? Thank you very much. Wow. So 96% like that idea, 1% don't, and 2% are not sure. Great. The fourth idea that we looked at was that students take an exam at the end of the school year. Well, stealth assessment is an idea that eliminates the time and the cost and the anxiety of doing what known as stop and test exams. So instead of doing a formal exam, the idea is that schools collect data on students' knowledge over a semester or over a year. And because of the increase now in digital devices and digital learning, this is now a lot more possible than it used to be. So there can now be this sort of invisible assessment, which is integrated into learning. So what do you think of that idea? Natasha, could you open the poll, please? And could you show us the results? Okay, 83% like that idea, and 6% don't, and 11% are not sure. And finally, the fifth rule that we looked at was students sitting in rows within classrooms. Well, lots of schools are already taking a more flexible approach to organising their classrooms, with teachers being able to regularly move furniture to suit different activities. We know that children like routine and predictability, but sitting in rows for a whole year means that they experience learning in just one way and from just one perspective. And research suggests that the most effective way to organise a classroom is to be as flexible as possible, with teachers being able to regularly move furniture to create different environments. So finally, the last poll, what do you think of that idea? And can we see the results? Great, thank you very much. So 94% like that idea, and 2% don't, and 4% are not sure. Lovely, thank you very much. So those ideas, those 5 rules that we looked at and the 5 ways of breaking them, and what you were doing there, evaluating which ideas you liked, it is about working out which ideas will have the biggest impact. And that's what Shape Education is all about. The basis of Shape is events. It's a series of events that we run where we explore educational challenges and try to find solutions to them. And it's the way that Cambridge Assessment is thinking about how we design and deliver education to make sure that it meets the needs of young people and prepares them for the type of world that they'll face when they leave school. So I'm going to play you another very short video, and this shows part of a Shape event, so you get the idea of what I'm talking about.
Shape Education brings people from different perspectives together who share a drive for solving challenges faced by education today. Shape connects complex real-world problems with creative ideas and the smartest technology to build the next generation of solutions for the good of global education. Become part of a growing movement. Visit shapeeducation.org to get involved.
Okay, hopefully from that you get a sense of that there's a lot of activity going on at a Shape event, and it's very fast paced. And Shape events, they're not conferences which are usually aimed at a particular audience like teachers or researchers. What we do at a Shape event is to bring together experts from different sectors who want to make change happen in education. So it's not just teachers attending. And this is really important, that there will be some teachers there, obviously, but there'll also be some tech developers, some researchers, some policymakers, some learners, and so on, so that we get different perspectives on the problems and the challenges. And so what would typically happen at a one-day Shape event is that in the morning, there are some very short talks, some discussion to get everybody thinking about the educational challenges that exist and to make sure that everyone understands them. And this is the expansive part of the day. And then in the afternoon, people work in small groups to work out how to solve the challenges. And this is where it gets more reductive. And the benefits of this, I've already talked about this first one, finding the ideas that have the biggest impact. And it was clear from the polls that we ran earlier about the two ideas that you think have the biggest impact. One was the third one about lifelong learning, and the last one about arranging the classroom to suit the activities. Then the second benefit I want to mention is the importance of getting people from different sectors working together so that we get different viewpoints and different perspectives. This third benefit is really, really important. SHAPE is a way for Cambridge to learn about the world and to collect insights about the challenges that exist. And you, teachers around the world, have those insights. So we need you to help us do that. The fourth benefit is that the methodology that I'm describing of looking outside your own immediate world and your view of the world as teachers and connecting with people from other sectors, this is a way of accelerating everyone's thinking about the challenges and the problems and start being able to come up with solutions. And finally, SHAPE is more than just asking questions and talking about problems. It's a way to actually make change happen. So as a teacher, you have amazing insights about where the pain points exist and where the opportunities are to fix them. And we need to hear those insights so that we in Cambridge focus on the key problems which will have the biggest impact, and so that together we can tackle the challenges in education. So if you'd like to get involved in SHAPE and make change happen, then go to the SHAPE website at the bottom of the screen there and sign up to tell us that you want to get involved. So Helen, I think we've now got 10 or 15 minutes or so for questions.
Yeah, that's right. And it's fascinating, Andrew. So some of those challenges and those problem areas have been coming out loud and clear in the chat and the Q&A here. But let's start with, I think this is really nice. So S. Caroline D has asked, is SHAPE short for something? Is the I think that's a really nice question to start with.
That is a really nice question, yes. And before I answer the question, I should just say that there's a small team of us in Cambridge who are working on SHAPE, and Helen is part of that team. So Helen and I are going to have a discussion about these questions rather than just me answering them. So the answer to that one is no, it's not short for anything. It's about, we chose the name because it's obviously about shaping education and changing it in some of the ways that I've been describing.
It's one of those interesting things, and it takes a long time to choose a name for something, to get the right name, and we liked that one. It came out really nicely at the top. Okay, so yeah, there's some interesting questions here. I'm just going to start from the beginning, really. So we had a couple of questions, one from Salwa about how can reimagining happen in online and blended programs. So it's quite specific to how can we reimagine education when we're already sort of on the chalk face, we're delivering blended learnings. How can we reimagine education at the same time? And contrasted with that as well, this is an anonymous question, is why do some systems succeed while others fail? And can you share ideas about how we can engineer educational institutions for achieving success? So I thought those two were quite nice together, because one is small scale in the classroom, how can you imagine education? And one is a bigger scale as an institution or as a country or a ministry, how can we shape education?
Yeah, okay. So I guess one of the important things about SHAPE and what we're trying to do with SHAPE is it's this idea of change from the bottom up. So I think to the first question about how can it work, I would say two things. First of all, change imposed from the top down has limited chances of success. And with something as complex as education, you can't just rip it all up and start again. The way that effective change can happen is through developing communities of people around the world who want to make that happen and start trying to experiment with different ideas on a small scale, and gradually you build a momentum that leads towards change. And that's what SHAPE is about. It's not about people in Cambridge saying this is how you must do it. It's about working together with people from the different sorts of sectors that I talked about, little by little, trying things out, experimenting, seeing what works and building on that. And the small team that I mentioned in Cambridge who are working on this, this is what we do in our job. So we work in the new product development team in Cambridge Assessment English. And this is how innovators develop new products in lots of startups around the world. You don't spend a long time, years and years, building a big project, big product, whatever that is, and then launch it onto the world. You do it in small iterative steps, you test it out, you see if it works, and you go from there. And so we're using what we know works in product development terms and applying that to education. Helen, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's right. I mean, that's one of the really nice things about SHAPE is that in the room during that event, whether that's a face-to-face event or an online event, we have people from all across different sectors. So we have teachers, we have learners, we have people from ministries, we have policymakers, we have tech people. And the advantage of that is that people leave an event like SHAPE with an idea of what they can do themselves to help drive forwards change. And that might be something very small, which is really important. Like, small things are not like unimportant, but it might be something that you just change in your classroom. It might be the way you do something in your classroom, or it might be the way that you talk to your colleagues to create change together. Or it might be something that you can take to your school leaders and get them to implement. But the advantage of having the discussions at SHAPE is that policymakers and institution leaders hear your conversations as well, and they may, by themselves or with other people, then take those ideas forward at a higher level as well. So it's kind of a way of helping everything to meet up in the middle and to actually get change happening, which is really nice.
The other thing I think that I would say about those two questions, Helen, is that it kind of sounds impossible. You think, well, how on earth do we do this? But it isn't impossible. It really is doable by connecting the right people together. And there are solutions out there to a lot of the problems that exist, but we just don't know about them because we tend to exist in our different silos. So our circles, if you like, are limited to our particular areas of focus. And one of my favorite quotes is from, there's an American writer called William Gibson. He's a science fiction writer. And he said, the future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. And what he's saying is that the solutions are out there. We just haven't found them because we haven't connected the right people together.
Yeah. And okay, so I've got a question here from Nancy as well, which is who can attend SHAPE events? What are the expected outcomes for teachers and learners who have limited power in real policy change? So that links to just what we've been talking about. Who can attend SHAPE events? Lots of different people can attend SHAPE events, and that's what makes it successful. So as I said before, we invite learners to share their insights. So learners not just attending, but learners speaking at those events to share their experiences of education and what works and what doesn't. So learners, teachers, school leaders, really importantly, employers in the community. So they have a really important voice and really important insights to share about the needs for the workplace. And then again, all of those other groups, so researchers, policymakers. Have I missed people, Andrew? I'm sure I have.
I think you've covered most of them.
Quite a lot. And then the expected outcomes, again, can be personal, can be institutional level, or they can be at a higher level as well. And some of the changes that we hope to achieve is that people start working together. So tech companies, researchers and teachers, for example, might work together to understand the impact of educational technology and share that impact so that we can all learn from it and try to move in the right direction. Another one here, this one's about assessment. And there's another one related to it about teacher training. So Georgina says, I find assessing students in online classes tricky. I used homework as the basis for my assessment in the last academic term and didn't do any typical exams. But this is very time consuming and takes away from planning time. Any other ideas? And I like this question because this is one of those challenges where it just pulls it all into perspective. It's how do we implement change? Andrew, do you have any response for that one?
So I think the point about assessment and it's time consuming, I think we all understand that, and that's why I think the example that I talked about stealth assessment and integrating assessment more into learning, so that you don't stop the learning for a period of time to go off somewhere else and do an assessment. You can start to get around that problem. So I think the answer lies in integrating assessment more into learning, and there's lots of work going on in Cambridge on a number of projects to do exactly that.
Yeah, and we just got a little comment here as well. What's the difference between stealth assessment and continuous assessment? The word stealth sounds a little bit ominous. It does sound ominous, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, really. Yeah. It's assessing as you go, so learning doesn't stop for a period of time. Because there has to be an assessment. But yeah, stealth sounds like you're doing something secretive, which it wouldn't be the case at all. I mean, students would know that everything they're doing is contributing towards a picture that the teacher is getting.
Yeah, and interestingly here, Professor Rita Orsi is saying that, Cambridge exams are really very precise and quite strict in their assessment. And students are assessed by an expert. So maybe is some of what we're talking about here a bit of a contradiction with our sort of traditional practices, our traditional assessment practices? What does that look like going forwards?
Yeah, I don't think it's a contradiction. I mean, we're certainly not saying that summative assessments shouldn't exist any longer. We're simply saying that the distinction between formative assessment and summative assessment is perhaps an artificial one, and that there's a lot more that we can do working with people to develop a more integrated view of assessment.
Yeah, I think that's right. So a lot of what we're working on is the relationship between learning and assessment, and how we make assessment, sort of the results of assessment, accessible and relevant to learners and their teachers as well, so that we can use assessment well for continued learning. I think that's right. Lola asks, this is another one which goes right to the heart of the problem. Lola asks, what kind of qualifications would teachers need to do this kind of teaching where those rules are changed, Andrew? Because these are nice challenges, these are nice changes. But how would this work for different subjects? I really like this question, because this is kind of like what SHAPE is all about, is bringing people together to try and find answers to that question. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree, Andrew?
Yeah, I think what we're saying really is that teachers will carry on doing what they're doing, and they'll carry on doing the things that they went into teaching in order to do. The point, one of the points I was making earlier was that the problem is with the system, and that's what we need to change, and the constraints that the system places around it is what causes a lot of these difficulties. And if we can change some of those things, then I think that the nature of the work that that teachers do will become a lot more enjoyable. And most people go into teaching because, you know, they want to make a difference and they want to change things and they want to be innovative. And unfortunately, in many places, they find that they have limited possibilities to do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm just scrolling down through the Q&A because there's lots more questions come in. One that we had from Ajahn at the beginning was, how do we reshape education during the COVID-19 crisis? And this might be quite interesting, Andrew, because obviously we've had such a radical change to teaching practice over the last few months. And shape is really about thinking how we can refocus education to meet the needs of our people and our societies now, but also for the future. So how does that fit together? How can we cope with a crisis and reimagine education at the same time?
Yeah, so I think what a lot of people I think have felt is that dealing with the crisis was it was all about responding to an immediate crisis, as you say, and people have done that in some extraordinary ways. And what we want to do now is build on some of those things and try and build a model that's more sustainable and actually accelerates some of the thinking that has been going on over the last few years already. Some of those things I talked about in the 5 examples that I gave, and we find the things which actually are going to have the biggest impact, and we develop those, we build those into a more sustainable way forward.
Okay, so that links quite nicely into, I think it's Merve's question here. And this is saying, you know, suppose there is a new method or a new system for learning, but we don't know about how that will affect students or how that will affect children's learning. And the question is, how can we try out that system? I mean, I guess the question really here is how we balance trying out new things with not having a negative impact on learning that's already happening in the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That you know, any changes that are made, you know, they need to be research led. We need to know that they work. So the curriculum, for example, you know, this has come up in a number of the shape events that we've run, Helen, hasn't it? That you know, maybe do we need a different curriculum, a more slimmed down curriculum? Is there too much in the curriculum? Well, you know, any changes to a curriculum need to be well thought through and researched, and we need to be very confident that those changes work. But I'm remembering one of the discussions that we had at a previous shape event about do we need a more learner-centered curriculum? What would the curriculum look like, for example, if we put learners more at the center of it and design the curriculum with also employers much more central in that curriculum, so that learners are learning things which will help them in the future world of work as they move into it. And there was a feeling in the discussion that I'm remembering that employers are too disconnected from the curriculum at the moment. So there's lots of sort of ideas like that have been talked about and people do talk about, but yeah, I mean, you can't just change it overnight and hope it works. These sorts of changes need to be evidence led.
Yeah, going back to how you can reimagine education sort of in your classroom, like in real terms from a bottom-up level as well. I think there's something to be said there, Andrew, about how teachers do things anyway. So teachers do try new things in their classrooms, and there's no reason why you can't start small and start making small changes in the way that you do things. Based on, you know, sort of inspiration that you've got from elsewhere about what might work better for your students. And I think the real thing there is that this is really important classroom research. So just carrying on doing things in the same way when we are aware that there's a problem is not going to help anybody. But if we do try maybe sometimes to do things in a different way and measure the results and identify potential impact, then perhaps we can share that information with other teachers, with researchers, with larger institutions, and then we can do something about researching and identify things that really can have an impact in specific contexts.
I think that's right. It's very easy. It's very easy to think, oh, I can't change anything.
Yeah.
Everything's impossible. Which I mean, it just isn't true. And I mean, I think that the small team, Helen, that we're in, that I talked about earlier, is a good example of that. I mean, it's sometimes quite easy to think when you work in a large organization, whatever that organization is, to kind of think, oh, I can't change anything. But actually you can. There's an awful lot of things you can change if you go about it in the more bottom-up way that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's giving yourself permission, or giving the people around you permission to try and make those changes, isn't it, partly as well? There's a question here from Nini. Is it possible for us to organise our own SHAPE events? Do we get support? That's a fantastic question.
That's a really interesting question. Well, I think the answer to that is, at the moment it isn't, but it's something that we've talked about, Helen, isn't it? And it's certainly something that we're keen to do. I mean, I should just say to everybody that SHAPE has only existed since this time last year. It was September last year that we ran the first SHAPE event. So it's very new. We've only run 3 SHAPE events so far, and certainly moving towards that kind of model where people can run their own SHAPE events. It would be lovely if we can.
Yeah, that's great. And another question here about how can we sort of see, how do we share, or how do we materialize SHAPE ideas? I think maybe that's possibly at the implementation level, but also how do we just share the things that are coming out of SHAPE with the wider community? So we have a website, shapeeducation.org. We will send you a link in the follow-up email to this session as well, to a place where you can express your interest in attending SHAPE events. But that website, that link, also has information about previous events. So you can see video content there from our previous events, and you can see some of the outcomes as well, some of the things that were discussed at those events. So that's one place to have a look. And we do share ideas through social media. So we'll have some podcasts coming out soon as well. Is there anything else you wanted to add there, Andrew?
No, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I think, have we got time for one more question?
I think we've got time for just one more. People are talking about the video. Yes, we'll share the link to the video as well.
Yeah, it goes on. There's 6 minutes of it, which, I mean, it's a wonderful video, and I would love to have played it all, but yeah, do watch the rest of it because it's really good.
Yeah. I'm just having a quick look through the questions here. There's one here. I was going to say there's one here which is really interesting, and it said how to have a universal curriculum. This is from Simonette, so we can have learning the world together. And that's really interesting because that is one of the ideas, that is related to one of the ideas that came out of a previous SHAPE event around curriculum. So I think we are really running out of time, but if you are interested in curriculum and reform, then do have a look at the website.
Yeah.
And the last question is, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
It's okay, Andrew, you continue.
I was just going to say, my last thought about all of this and how people can get involved is, I mean, please remember, it's not about being right or wrong, or having an idea that is, in inverted commas, the right idea. It's about having the conversation.
That's totally right.
The really important thing, and this is what SHAPE is about, is to start having these conversations in different communities around the world and making education more connected to those communities.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your session. We're going to finish there, and thank you to everybody for your participation. It's fantastic to see.
I've been
thank
watching
you.
The chat comments go flying past. So thank you so much for all your engagement and participation, everyone.
Have a lovely day or evening. Bye.